Hello, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well. Hope you had a good week as we get ready for Shabbos. This week's video, Dvar Torah, is sponsored by Elaine and Stephen Danker with their prayers for a complete refuah shlema for their son-in-law, Alan Katz. And we, of course, join those tefillos, and we pray that he should have a complete and speedy refuah shlema. I'd like to share with you now one of the beautiful midrashim that our children learn growing up in school, with the stories of the Avot and Imahot, our forefathers and foremothers, and try to unpack it a little bit to, on a more sophisticated level, the messages that is trying to convey. The Torah opens a scene. Yaakov, I guess, is home. Vayazed Yaakov Nazid, and Yaakov is preparing a lentil stew. Vayavo Esav ben Asadev hu ayef, and Esav comes from the field and he is exhausted. And he tells Yaakov, Haliteni na min hadom hazeh, feed me some of that red stuff. Vayomer Yaakov, and Yaakov suddenly assumes to be a non sequitur, says, well, mechrach hayamas bechoras chali, then sell me, if you want this soup, sell me the rights to being the firstborn. And Esav responds, Hineh anochi holech lamus, well, I'm going to die anyways. Who cares about this firstborn? Swear to me, he says. He swears. Vayim koras b'choraso, and he sells his firstborn rights. V'Yaakov nasan le'esav lechem v'nazid adashim, he gives him the bread and the lentil soup. V'yochel v'yesh, he eats it and he drinks it. V'yakam v'yelech, he gets up and he leaves. Vayivez Esav es b'chora, and Esav had spurned the birthright. Seems like such a dramatic event that sort of comes out of nowhere. Suddenly Yaakov just proposes, well, if you want the food, sell me your birthright. And so Rashi quotes the Medrash, which explains, no, there is quite a dramatic backdrop to this discussion of this event. It was a very, very significant day. Rashi quotes the Medrash, which says, sell to me this day. What does it mean? This day, Sheba'oso yom meis Avraham. It was that day that Avraham, Yaakov and Esav's grandfather, had passed away. And Yaakov was preparing a lentil soup. Bishel Yaakov adashim lahavros es ha'avel. Yaakov was preparing a lentil soup to feed, to comfort his father Yitzchak, who, so to speak, was sitting Shiva for Abraham. So imagine the scene. Yaakov is preparing, so to speak, the Shiva food to go comfort Yitzchak. And where was Esav? Esav apparently was not at the funeral. Esav had been out hunting for sport, and he comes home and he sees the food, which is supposed to be for his father sitting Shiva. He says, just give that to me, I'm hungry. Yaakov apparently in that moment realized something, that Esav is making a statement. And he says, well, Esav, if you care so little about your father, about our grandfather, just sell me the birthright. What is this Medrash doing? Well, a few things. What motivated the Medrash is that lentils were seen traditionally as a food that mourners would eat. So if Yaakov was preparing lentils, then it must be for a Shiva. There was also tradition that Abraham died before he saw Esav openly turn to wicked ways, so that Abraham could die satisfied without seeing that pain. And so if this is the day when Esav turns, Avraham at least must have passed away beforehand. According to the Medrash, he passed away right at that moment before Esav spurns the birthright, so to speak. But there's more here. It's not just about Esav, so disrespectfully taking the Shiva food. That's obviously a way that the sages are trying to capture dramatically for us how Esav rejected the tradition of Abraham. But it seems to be also about that Esav simply didn't care, didn't respect, didn't value the past, his predecessors, the fact that his grandfather had just passed away, that his father was sitting Shiva. This just didn't move him. That's what a Medrash says. Esav, so to speak, said, well, if Avram's dead, he's dead. Who cares about him now? Esav lived in the here and now. He did not care about the past. We see this later in the Parshat. Perhaps this is also motivation for the Medrash. After Esav has lost the blessings and his heart is filled with hatred towards his brother, he wants to kill his brother, but he can't kill him because he knows how much that would pain his living father Yitzchak, and he does also respect his father. But he says in his heart, Vayomer Esav b'libo, Yirkavu yemei evel avi. My father's days of mourning, when my father will die, will come soon. Va'aharga es Yaakov achi, and then I will kill my brother. In Yitzchak's lifetime, Esav would never do it. He would never pain his father in such a way. But once his father would be dead, he'd be dead. Who would care about what his father thought? And so he'd kill Yaakov. We see in the Medrash and the Psukim, again, Esav just did not care about the past, about predecessors. If you were alive, if you were strong, if you were powerful, yes. But if you're no longer here, who cares about you? Returning to the original scene when Esav sells his firstborn rights to Yaakov. It's ironic. As Chazal portrayed, it was a moment in which Esav was rejecting the past, spurning the past. But the Psukim themselves, it's actually the opposite. Esav seems to be stating how little he cares about the future. Yaakov tells Esav, sell me the Bechorah, the firstborn rights. Vayomer Esav, and Esav says, Hinei anochi holech lamus. Well, who cares? I'm going to die anyways. Simple level, that means I'm going to die. So my children, my grandchildren, my descendants won't inherit whatever the firstborn position would entitle them. Who cares? Once I'm dead, I'm dead. The way some Mepharshim say it, I lead a reckless life. I go out and hunt. I go out and try to capture, fight, kill wild animals. There's a good chance I'll die, as I read into the Psukim. I don't care about the future. I live for the here and now. If it's reckless, it's reckless. V'lama li zeh b'chorah. I don't care about the future. As Rashi, according to the Medrash, puts the words into their mouths, they were talking about what was the Bechorah, the firstborn rights. Originally, the firstborns would be the ones who would serve in the Beis HaMikdash before the events of the Egel Azav, which transferred it to the Kohanim. They were talking about who would serve, whose descendants would serve in the Beis HaMikdash. And Esav says, hundreds of years from now, I don't care about that. I can't think about that. I'll be dead by then, dead and long gone. But Yaakov had his eye even on that distant future, hundreds, if not 1,000 years from when he was alive. There is a connection. Those that cherish, respect, value the past, who see how one generation is linked to another generation, similarly care about, value, think about the future. If one appreciates what they have received from the past, then you also know what you project into the future and how others one day will be looking up and remembering you. Esav lived in the here and now. The past was the past. The future did not yet exist. If he could touch it, if he could feel it, if he could enjoy it, yes, but otherwise he could not care. Yaakov, as we see in the Psukim, but especially as the Midrashim presented, had a much longer-term perspective. To be Jewish, like Esav, we also appreciate the here and now. We also have to have a much longer-term perspective, living both with the past, the recent and distant past, and the future, the recent and far-out future. We know in our tradition the past is so important. We remember, we value, we cherish family members, parents, grandparents. We live with Jewish history, with tradition, with Masorah. The events of Yetzias Mitzrayim, Har Sinai, even these events of the Parsha, Yaakov and Esav, they are alive. We live with them. They are part of who we are. And at the same time, we live with the future. We should try to have a longer-term perspective. Again, appreciating the here and now, living in the here and now, but also thinking about the future, thinking about how Our actions, our choices will have ramifications, thinking about the days, the months, the years from now, and beyond that, whether it's how we raise our children, raise our families, whether it's how we support and are involved in communities and institutions that will have a longer future than ourselves, thinking about appreciating how our actions, what we do, how we live our lives, our models that others pick up, our actions do reverberate into the future. And we think about how we are part of that future. And again, not just days, months, years, but even centuries. We live with the ideas of Mashiach, of the end of times. That is also part of our consciousness. Just like Yaakov could think about hundreds of years into the future, we also should be thinking about hundreds, thousands of years into the future. And our piece of this story, starting from Har Sinai, Yetzias Mitzrayim, leading all the way to Mashiach. We live in the here and now. We enjoy the here and now. But as Jews, as descendants of Yaakov, we also live with that which lasts forever.